Hey everyone, it's CJ again at DD Thrive 11 here, and in this video I wanted to talk about what I'd mentioned in my previous video about my depression, etc. And if you haven't watched that video, I'll put a link in the description box below in this one. But I wanted to start and talk about what I finished off with in that video about how my prayer to value my life and my joy, or pretty much this video is about valuing yourself, valuing your life and your joy, and how that prayer for me, that determination or goal or focus is helping me with my depression, and but just also just talking about that topic and why it's so and in talking about it to hopefully communicate or express across the electronic waves, why it's such a turning point in a way. Yeah, it is a turning point. And so diving right in, I thought I was gonna like wait to make this video, but I was like, you know what, actually, because of how long it kind of can take me to like work myself up to get in front of a camera, I'm gonna make it now. So my value video. So about value and valuing yourself. When I think of value and something that comes to mind of value is like something really expensive, really nice and shiny, and essentially something that really matters and one of the reasons why it matters and my value is so much is because it has a purpose, right, in my life. And so that it can kind of go and venture into a more sad thing when you think about that applying to a person, right? If someone doesn't have value for you, that means they don't matter or don't have purpose. And so scary to go down that rabbit hole, huh? So I have my notes, and this is very important because I think probably a lot of these videos are going to be on the longer end. If you're watching throughout the whole thing, I really, really appreciate it. This is something that matters a lot to me to share. And so it just means a lot. People are watching. So diving right in. The way this, I guess this belief has, or the negative of the belief, or like, oh, me not valuing myself or having no value, has manifested in the past, has been in numerous ways. But actually, I think I want to start and reiterate again why this came up for those who are probably just watching this video. Now that I think about it, I want to start there. So backtrack in time to 2 weeks ago, Friday, just after having finished my first term back at school. That'll be addressed in another video. Oh my God, there's a lot. But yeah, I fell into the dumps of my depression on that Friday, and it didn't let up on Saturday. And that Saturday, I spoke to a friend who practices the faith that I practice. And for those who don't know, I mentioned in the previous video, I practice Nichiren Buddhism. If you're a fan of Tina Turner and you've watched What Love's Got to Do with It, that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. And so she just called me out of the blue. I called her back, which I never do. I don't call people back when I'm feeling that way. I don't call people. I just will text them. Oh, excuse me. And we talked, and she was giving me like some examples of her experience, and she said it dawned on her at one point that she hadn't chanted or prayed, for those who are coming from different denominations, to like really value her life and her joy, her happiness. And one of the things that came up, the reason why that came up was I was talking about and frustrated and like venting about what I was going through in terms of relationships with people. And I'm talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about just overall, and just how I felt I was treated for what I was given, and etc., like what I got in return and stuff. And a lot of what she said was like, because in Buddhism, we believe that the internal reflects, or the external is reflecting the internal. Once you change your internal, you would see your physical world start to shift as well. And so also whenever we see a repeating pattern in terms of karma and stuff like that, it's we start to look at probably what belief we might be holding in ourselves and in our mindset, etc., about ourselves, that is manifesting in a particular way in our lives. So when I kept talking about this in relationships, she was saying, like, you've probably held a certain belief, and because, and I was like frustrated, I was like angsty, I was like, what do you mean? Because I haven't always felt this way or whatever like that. I didn't always believe this about myself. I haven't always been like, I was a great friend when I was in high school, and then turn around and like all this shit happened, and like I've been treated like crap. And she said, you probably already actually have held that belief, but the circumstances, the right circumstances for that belief to come out had not been met yet. And I had to take a pause, because when I like was thinking about way back in the past, I was like, oh shoot. And I will get into the circumstances and the right circumstances for that cause to come out, or for that belief to kind of rear its head in another video, because it is a bigger topic in a way, but it centers around community in a way. So so as I sat and I had to reflect, I was like, oh, okay. Because I did have this belief for a long time, all the way into my childhood. And so the way in which I can't really say what the belief was, the negative belief, because that wasn't articulated, but the way in which what I was holding, this weight of, in which I had to chant to value my life, the way in which that manifested in my life was, in the past, I remember, for instance, when I graduated from school and still hadn't found like, a regularly paying job to cover everything, and like my parents were helping me, but they were also strapped a little bit, stretched a little bit, because for kids, all of us were in college at that time, just about. And so I would have conversations with my mom saying like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to you and daddy and stuff. And this is when I was 24 years old, and around money and stuff. And I just thought of myself as being some burden that my parents had to carry. And that's a way in which it manifests in terms of how I thought of myself, as just like a dead weight that nobody really wanted to deal with, and was too much trouble to deal with. Another way was, I thought of another instance that popped into my head, and this was when I was probably 18, 19 years old, and my father was visiting from Nigeria, and we went out, and in fact, just to touch on something general and then go into the specific, because this is also a way in which it manifested that I have listed, is that first of all, when my dad would come, my brothers, they're all younger than me, I'm the oldest, particularly the youngest two, be like, oh, daddy, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And whenever it would come to me, my dad would ask me what I want. I'd be like, oh, I'm fine. I don't want anything. Even though I did. But I, again, like in terms of I just did not want to be a burden to anyone. And that's the way it manifested. Like, and then in this particular instance, I was buying the collected works of Shakespeare for school. And behind the teller desk, or the the checkout desk behind the bank, the Barnes & Noble's tellers, was a jewelry making starter kit. Now, around that time, kids don't get up on Saturdays. Like any person, like, I don't care who you are, like 25 and under, especially like before 20, I don't know. I'm not getting up before like any AM on a Saturday morning yet, except for Saturday morning cartoons. And yet I would actually do my cleaning. My mom had us clean the house every weekend. I would do my cleaning Friday nights, all of it. Because once I sat, like Saturday morning, I'm not being bothered for anything. I would get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, or something like that, or 6, something ridiculous, something sacrilegious. Because I would get up to watch Bead, Baubles, and Jewels every morning. So people in Houston, Texas probably know what I'm talking about. I would get up every morning, watch Bead, Baubles, and Jewels, which would come on and end just before Saturday morning cartoons and like, you know, One Piece and Winx and all that jazz. And I loved it. So I think it might have been my mother who pointed it out to me or something, or I just noticed it. But like, it was like, oh shoot, there it is. Like, to start, you know, that's why I was watching it. I guess I just was drawn to it, and like, it's like, oh, there it was, a starter kit. And my dad was like, oh, do you want that? You know, do you want it too? And I was just like, I thought of him buying both, and I thought, oh, it would be too much for him. It would be too much of a burden. And I said no. And I was like, oh, I thought I'll get it next time. And I've never seen that kit ever again. And yeah, that memory came up. And then, yeah, and what else? Yeah, as I mentioned in the previous video, I would, whenever I'd probably go shopping with my mother, my mom was so frustrated with me because I'm a tomboy, and like, that's another video in terms of like my my way presentation and like who I like, how I am as a female and what that means in society, and in a patriarchal society, and to a mother who's about those rules and stuff, and me, a rebel. And so but you know, so I was the bane of her existence in a way, because I'm the only girl, and I didn't want to like shop and like all the time and wear dresses all the time, and it just wasn't my thing. I'd rather play 2-and-touch football. But when we go shopping, she would be like, oh, Christy, what about these? You know, that's, for those who are watching, that's my anglicized name. Please do not call me that. My parents can call me whatever they want. They're my parents. And like, you know, siblings and stuff. But I go by CJ. But anyway, so she'll be like, oh, Christy, what about this one? And I'll be like, no. And you know, I can't imagine what it was from my mom, the confusion and stuff. But, and we don't have like a relationship, and also it's not like kind of like the general norm and or vibe in our family to talk about the softer like insecurities and everything. So it probably seemed to her like I just wasn't interested, when honestly I actually did not feel worthy enough or like good enough to wear those kind of clothes. I was like, I actually would tell myself, oh, just not yet. I'm not like, you know, skinny enough yet. At that time I was really obsessed with, like, as you know, most girls, really obsessed with being skinny. So I was like, oh, I'm not skinny enough yet to like really wear that. I'm not, you know, this enough yet and stuff. Another way in which, like, to wear nice clothes and stuff. So I always felt self-conscious. Another way in which this manifested was in the way I tracked my YouTube, my lock journey up till now. Sorry, y'all. This is like a hard day. If you haven't watched my depression video, this is the video that I made just before this. So I'm like having an off, like, depressed day. So, but yeah. So the way in which I had tracked my lock journey before, was part of it. Not to say that I didn't have a lot of the technological issues that I did, but in the way that I handled them, I guess I like also like whenever a glitch would happen, I just be like, kind of give up, you know, and feel like, oh, I can't do it, or and also like in the topics that I cover, you know, so I don't have a lot of like, you know, things to consider before you lock your hair. This is how you retwist your hair and stuff. And in my earlier videos, I mentioned how that wasn't going to be the nature of like me tracking my lock journey and stuff, or like, and also I've mentioned like, you know, there are several, you know, YouTubers who've documented and made those videos. And that's all true. I did feel like, why like just make the same thing almost? But after really chanting and really like focusing on valuing myself and my life, I realized, oh, I just felt like, who would want to hear what I have to say about it when everybody else already has stuff about, you know, like, who would want to hear from me? What do I have to teach anybody? That person did it better with, like, you know, with better edits and the lights and everything. So people should just go and watch that person. So I pretty much felt like I didn't have much to offer by way of advice, like step-by-step advice on locks and even hair care. Never mind the fact that I've been making my own hair products since 19 years old and stuff like that. But like, oh yeah, I have nothing to share, or nothing to, that anybody, that would be of any value for anybody else, in my like romantic relationships and stuff, the way that would manifest was, and not always, but and for those, and I'm gonna say this early, because I know that people, especially in today's climate, are very much feeling type of ways about this. But I'm queer. I'm QPOC. Um, if you want to get really specific with it, bye. But I don't really care like about the binary. Like I would date gender neutral people, etc. So for those of you who are, if you'd like to unsubscribe or whatever, you are free to do so. But yeah, so in my romantic relationships, not so much with those that are biologically male and identify as male, but those are biologically female and identify as female or gender neutral, and same with male. I always feel like I was seeking validation, excuse me, from people, and I would feel like I would have to do backflips in terms of my personality, etc., in order to be, loved, right? Because the what has value we love. So I get that, and that we can see. I pretty much felt like I was someone who didn't have value, so I felt like I had to do something to be of value for someone, and that is linked to something that someone sent me an article on Mother's Day about how apt, about the mother wound, and I will link that article in the description box below for those who may need it. And so I used to call this waiting for approval, but it is, and by this I mean seeking validation. I always felt like I had to have approval in order to, like, for instance, like create anything, write anything that like someone would want to read, and that would always come in the form of like, a course or classes or some external approval, for myself, to do anything, to create anything, to share anything. Let me see. I think I just skipped over it, like went into the relationships and the out. Yeah, so I'd seek validation. I used to call it waiting for approval. The way actually that would also manifest is like I had this way of like pitching my ideas to other people, being like, oh, I'm thinking kind of doing this, and I would kind of like wait, and I was actually waiting to see if someone would think it was a great idea, because it wasn't enough that I thought it was a good idea or that I came up with it. That wasn't enough. That was enough for that idea to be valued, to seem like it had any sort of potential outside of my own head. Like the survive to live to thrive, I've been wanting to do that. I talked about it with like best friend and stuff and people in December, and who said it was a great idea actually, and I still didn't think it was a good enough idea. And so I didn't make the video until April, and that's just the intro video. It would also manifest in terms of thoughts around like my voice not mattering. So in light of a lot of the political issues, I honestly think human issues that are, or issues about valuing people's humanity that are being horrendous acts against people's humanity and right to live, including murdering, etc., being dumped on by laws and politics. So they're not so much political issues as much as human issues that are being equivocated and being belittled, honestly, by the political system, right? So I witnessing all these all this. I actually was silent for a while. And honestly, it's not so much because I didn't care, but I felt like it didn't matter. Like my voice didn't matter, my opinion didn't matter on it. Um, I Part of it's because I had done a show that related to these issues, and my second reprise of the show, again for free, again I actually really pushed and like pressed out to, or like reached out to a lot of my, you know, people of color that I know in the theater community to come and see it. Quite a few did not come and see it, and 5 days later Mike Brown was shot and murdered and left on sidewalk for 4 hours. And with a show, and having done a show that really directly addressed this, and also having to do research, etc., for that show, and seeing photos in color that looked very similar to photos in black and white, and you know, in like researching the names like Medgar Evers, etc., and people who literally were murdered and died for us, and seeing the same exact way of fighting, I kind of went into science because I didn't know. I was like, how, what do we need to do? How do we need to shout? Does my voice matter? Does it actually matter? So I went silent. And that's how it manifested my voice, and also my my creativity. I just felt like my voice didn't matter, and I struggled with that. Like for instance, early in the first year of me documenting my lock journey, I talked early about, you know, making a video on patience and on whether or not to keep my locks. The video that I dropped, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't make those videos the month of November, the week that I was going to, because of the elections. And I didn't talk about the elections, and I wanted to. But I was talking about locks and stuff. And also I felt like I mean, everybody seems, you know, who's going to care, you know? And then, so those are, you know, just a couple of ways in which it manifested. The light's going a bit. So I'm going to try to like get through all this other stuff. And so what I want to address is how I'm dealing with it now. Now that I am chanting and focusing on valuing my life and my joy, I'm making a lot more different decisions, because it's bringing up to consciousness the ways in which I didn't, and the actions that I took, or the actions I didn't take. And so I'm like, okay, so let me do the opposite. So one of the things is investing, or taking me seriously. So if I'm taking and valuing my life, the components of my life also need to be taken seriously. And that includes my dreams and goals and the ideas. And so instead of waiting for other people to get on board and to be validated, I am investing. For instance, I'm actually taking a course and studying on how to like be a better YouTuber, dead ass, because I feel like not valuing myself, I've also not valued you guys and my audience, and that means a lot to me. So in terms of the quality of my videos, in terms of, you know, my channel, for instance, I actually put a banner and all that stuff, and like really investing the money, paying for courses, and like even investing in like, you know, instruments and stuff, and investing time in myself, and researching and planning out personal projects that I want to do for, you know, for YouTube, and then for Instagram, taking things like my health seriously. That's going to be another journey. That's been like something I want to do again since December. And that's actually not so much a matter of like ideas or like value. It's actually about like funds and time, and how much time I've had, etc. But that is something I'm going to also be documenting. And I'm trying to still, again, like in terms of researching how to make different channels on YouTube so that this is better organized for y'all. Like investing money into myself. And a lot of the top, you know, life coaches or gurus will say like invest in yourself first. So, you know, like I said, putting in the money for courses, putting in the money for the tools and instruments that I need for this, and putting in, you know, the time. If you say time is money, then, you know, that too, to build on the knowledge and things that I need. And another thing that I have to work on, and I'm doing it not so much consciously in terms of writing and stuff, but just noticing as I go on with my day. But something I called that Lisa Nichols details in one of her interviews. Again, I'll find that, link that in the description box. Where she talks about, I think she calls it this in her interview. Because it's been a while since I've watched it, but I read about it in a book about insomnia, and it just brought that to mind. Called cognitive restructuring. So Lisa Nichols is like the teacher of the law of attraction, but unlike a lot of people who kind of read the law of attraction and watch the film, and like your friends who tell you like, oh, just change your thoughts, just change your thoughts. I really appreciated the fact that she talked about how she actually works with people to change their thoughts, because a lot of people don't really take into account that it takes work, particularly for those of us who struggle with depression and anxiety. It's a process, it's a journey. It's not a quick pill, quick fix, and really being vigilant on when, for instance, I'm like saying like, oh man, this probably isn't gonna work. I'm like, hello, we don't know that. And even if it's just that creates an opening, for possibility versus impossibility. Yeah. So those are just like the beginnings of how I am working on valuing my life, and that's changing my relationships, right? It's changing. It's like, oh wait, that person never ever picks up or is there for me, so why am I putting my efforts there? I'm going to focus on and put efforts and active conscious efforts into the relationships with people who have showed who value me, because I am valuable. Yeah. So I guess I'll go more into this as I work with it in terms of how it's manifesting in my friendships, relationships, and stuff. And also feel free to ask me any questions if you want me, if you feel like I didn't explain enough. I mean, the video is again about 30 minutes. So, but I do know I talk in like really, I like to like chew into things a little bit more. I don't know, Virgo rising, Southern node in Virgo, so I like detail. Whenever I explain things, I do it in detail. I like actually for people to give me the detailed version of their stories as well, because it really takes me on the journey, especially in an emotional way with them. But yeah, if there's anything that you guys wanted me to expand upon, more so, even if you catch like, oh, you said you're gonna put a link here and I don't see the link or something like that, I don't care. Just like let me know. Okay, so yeah, I hope this helps some people in terms of, if you're suffering from depression, from anxiety, from a lot of these quote unquote disorders, a hint for something else to talk about, then yeah, I mean, I'm glad if it's helpful. I really am. And just let me know. And again, I'll put the a link to the depression video in my description box, as well as the other links. And until next time, enjoy your Memorial Day weekends and all that jazz. All right, guys. Bye.